In this video, we're going to talk about how to easily organize data into a table, a 2x2 table that will give us some information given a set of two data columns. Now, the first column is binary, and we'll just say that this is these are grades of students coming into an exam prior to the exam. So we have 8 students who had A's coming into the exam, 9, excuse me. And then we have, let's see here, we have 9 students who had B's coming into the test. And here are their scores. We'll just say these are their scores out of 100. These are not real. These are randomly generated. So in this case, one person had an A coming into the test but scored a 21. And in this case, this person had a B coming into the test, but they clearly didn't take it. This person here had an A coming into the test and scored an 85 on the test. This person here had an A coming in, scored a 99 on the test. So what I want to do is I want to form a table, and I want to be able to see how many students had an A or a B. And furthermore, for each of these criteria, I want to see who passed the test or failed the test. So I'm going to set my criterion over here, or my cutoff, in other words. Okay, so my cutoff for passing, and this allows me to really easily automate this. Let's just say I'm going to say a student passed if they scored a 70 or higher. So I'm going to enter 70 there. And now what I want to do is I want in this cell right here, what I want in there is the number of students who had an A and passed the test. In other words, any row in here that has both the letter A and that has a score of at least 70 or higher would go into here. So I can actually go in here and count and say, all right, well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 students, 5 students who had an A coming into the test actually passed the test. So that means that 1, 2, 3, 4 students who had an A coming into the test failed the test. Okay, so I can count them manually, but let's say I want to end up changing this cutoff. So maybe I want to say, well, what would I need the cutoff score be to say that, maybe I don't have enough people passing the test, so I want to change the cutoff score. Okay, and maybe the people who don't reach the cutoff, I'm going to say, probably good idea to maybe retake the class next semester. So I'm going to use a function in here that is called count. And I'm just typing this over here so you can see what it's called. It's called count if s. And what that allows me to do is I am in this parentheses going to enter in a column and then its corresponding value that I'm looking for. Okay, so I'm going to type in equals count ifs. And you have to use an equal sign in Excel because of the fact that it's not going to recognize it as a formula. So this tells me that this function counts the number of cells specified by a given set of conditions or criteria, plural. Okay, when I open my parentheses, the first thing I'm going to enter in here is the criteria range. So arbitrarily, I'm just going to say, all right, let's look at the grades column first. So I'm only going to select those values there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this range in my cell, and I'm going to press F4. And what that will do is it'll put these dollar signs before the column and before the row. So because I don't want to keep typing in this formula for each cell, I am going to lock it in place. What that means is that if I copy and paste this formula anywhere on the spreadsheet, it's going to keep referencing these cells. Otherwise, if I copy and paste the cell, it's going to move over. It's going to move this over the number of rows and columns to where the number of rows and columns that I'm copying and pasting the formula over. Okay, so I want a criteria now. So what criteria am I looking for in here? Well, it's got to have an A. So what I'm going to do is, because I've nicely labeled this cell right here as A and nothing else with it, I'm just going to click in that cell right there. And what I'm also going to do here is I am going to, in this case, I'm going to lock the column. Because again, if I copy and paste the cell and I move it over to say G6, then it's going to want to move this reference cell over to F6. It's always going to keep it 1 unit away. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to lock the cell E6. I'm just going to lock the column so it keeps referencing the grade prior to coming into the test in that column. So I'm going to press F4 once. That will lock the cell. The dollar sign says lock column E, lock row 6. And I just want to lock column E. If I press it one more time, that locks column 6. but that's not what I want. I don't want to I want it to keep reading out of column E. So I'm going to press it one more time. So I've locked the column. So if I copy and paste this cell anywhere, it's going to continue referencing column E. Okay, now I'm going to put a comma in here, and I need to put in the criteria range, criteria 2. Well, now I want to look at the exam score, and again, I'm going to lock this, so I'm going to select my range right there, and I'm going to press F4. So again, I always wanted to reference from this column for the exam scores, and now I'm going to put a comma after that. And I'm going to put in, I only have 2 criteria. You could enter more if you want. The criteria 2 is that I want the score to be greater than or equal to 70. Okay, well, the way I'll do this is you have to use quotes, and you type in greater than sign, equal to sign, close the quote. Okay, so we won't explain why you have to put the quotes, but that's just part of the semantics of Excel. And now I need to put in an ampersand, and then the cell which is going to constitute the number that I want the counts to be greater than or equal to for. Okay, well, that's it. I'm going to close my parenthesis. So again, just as a recap here, we're going to count any row that has in the grades column has a value of A, and then in the exam 1 score column, any value that is greater than or equal to what's in I2, which is my cutoff, okay? So only if both of those criteria are satisfied, there's an A and a score of greater than 70, will a count appear. So I'm going to press enter now, and it tells me that there are 5 people who had an A coming into the test and passed the exam. Okay, so now what I can do, one thing I forgot in here, also I want to lock this cutoff score cell because I always wanted to reference that number right there. So I'm going to press F. If you forgot to put that in, you can come in here and highlight just that one cell and press F4, and that will take care of it. Press enter again, nothing should change. Okay, well, now I can copy and paste this. So I can do this in one of 2 ways. I can either drag that corner with you see the little square on the corner there, and I can drag that down. Okay, now let's see what it's done here. If I double click on that cell, it'll say, okay, well, look, we locked the grade column. You can see that that's what's in blue. And if there's a row where that grades column has a value equal to E7, so that's a grade of B coming into the test. And if the exam score, which is listed here in purple, is, well, we don't want it greater than or equal to 70. Sorry, yes, we do, because we want to have Bs that are considered passing, so greater than or equal to 70. I'll press enter, and now I should come in here and be able to verify that there are 4 Bs that have a score greater than 70. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's it. Okay, so quick verification, make sure our formula is working. Now I'm also going to drag this over this way. Now you can actually, whoops, undo that. I can actually grab these 2 cells here and pull that corner off to the right, and now I get 5-4 again, but that's because it's still now referencing a person who got an A, but we want people who failed the test. So that means we don't want this to be greater than or equal to. A person failed the test if they got a score of less than 70. So I'm just going to change that greater than or equal to. I'm not going to change any parentheses. I'm just going to change that to a less than. So that means that if a grade was equal to A and the exam score was less than 70, then I want Excel to count for me. So I should be able to come in here and see 4 scores where a person had an A and failed. Well, that's 1 score, 2 scores, 3 scores, 4 scores. Now I've got to do the same thing down here. I can't actually really copy and paste this cell, but just for the practice, I'll go in here and I'll change this. So this is a person who got a B. So yep, there it is, referencing a B, and I want to make sure that this counts the number of people who got a B and failed. So I've got to make sure that this is also less than 70. Okay, now press enter, and I should be able to verify that 5 people failed who got a B. Okay, so there's, whoops, one, cancel that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. And this makes sense just because these are randomly generated, so I'm not too surprised. These should probably be about the same if there was an equal group size, an even group size. Okay, now the reason this is very powerful is now, like I can go down here and I can type in another formula, like say, give me the sum. So if I type in equals sum, open parenthesis, and highlight these 2 cells. So I want to know how many people passed the test in total. Close that, press enter. I can do the same thing here. How many people failed the test equals sum, the number of people who failed, enter. I can come over here and say, okay, how many people got an A, had an A coming into the test? Sum, enter, and then how many people got a B on, had a B coming into the test equals sum, those guys, close parenthesis, enter. And then I can also, let's say, sum the totals. Now 9 plus 9 gives me 18. So regardless of whether I sum those marginal totals or these marginal totals, I should get 18. Okay, now the cool thing is here, I can change the cutoff. I can change it to, let's say, all right, well, I'm not really happy with the pass rate on this. Half the class passed, half the class failed. So I'm going to lower the cutoff. I'm going to say 60 is considered a pass, 60 or above. So what I should see is when I press enter is I should see now, because these 4 cells right here are referencing this cutoff score, then I should see the pass rates hopefully go up, assuming that there were people who scored between a 60 and a 70. Press enter. Nope, didn't see any change there. That's because there weren't any scores between 60 and 70. So maybe that's still not helping my pass rate. Maybe 50 is a pass rate. Nope, still not working. 40. Okay, there we go. So if I set my cutoff at 40, now I have allowed 11 people to pass, 7 in the A category, 4 in the B category. Still, there are 9 A's and 9 B's just because that's not affected by the cutoff. That's just affected by the students that had an A or a B. And so I can also perform functions on these numbers over here. Let's say I can write an equation down here that says, take that number and multiply it by something. Or if I want to know the pass rate, I could do the pass rate for, how many of the passes were A's or what fraction. I can do 7 divided by 11. If I want to know how many of the fails were A's, 2 out of 7, I can say equals this number divided by this number right here, whoops, this number right there, and that will tell me that 29% of the fails were by students who had an A coming into the test. So this allows me to quickly manipulate things. If I wanted to, let's say, retain this table right here, because obviously if I set the cutoff, these numbers are going to change, I can actually right-click this, or I can come up to make sure I'm in my Home tab up here, click Copy, and then come down here somewhere else where I want to paste it, maybe retain that information. Now, if I paste it, it's going to mess with all the formulas, and it's still going to be formula-driven. So I'm going to paste a special, and this allows me to paste values. And what that means right there is if you select that and it shows you the V, that means it's just going to paste the values. And if I click in here, notice that there's no formula associated with it. But if I come back up here and I click on the 4, that 4 is generated by a formula which we typed in earlier.